The neon lights of the club pulsed in time with the thumping bass as Karen strode through the entrance, expecting the usual red carpet treatment. But as she approached the burly security guard blocking her path, his stern expression told her this would be no ordinary night. "Excuse me, do you know who I am?" Karen snapped, flipping her highlighted hair over her shoulder. "I'm the host of this event. You need to let me through." The guard remained firmly in place, his beefy arms crossed over his chest. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but you've been banned from the premises." Karen's eyes widened in disbelief. "Banned? What are you talking about? This is my party." "That may be true," the guard replied evenly, "but you've caused too many problems here in the past. We can't risk having you inside again." Fury boiled up within Karen as she realized her usual tactics of intimidation and entitlement weren't working. How dare this lowly security guard deny her entry to her own VIP event? "Do you have any idea who I am?" she screeched, jabbing a manicured finger into the guard's chest. "I own this place. If you don't let me in right now, I'll have your job." The guard's expression hardened. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. If you continue to create a disturbance, I'll be forced to call the police." Karen's face flushed an angry red as she glared at the impassive guard. This was unacceptable. She always got her way, no matter who she had to steamroll over. But as she opened her mouth to unleash another tirade, a small part of her registered the growing crowd of onlookers, their curious gazes fixed on the spectacle unfolding before them. Realizing she was quickly losing control of the situation, Karen let out a frustrated huff and stormed away, muttering curses under her breath. This wasn't over. She would find a way to get back at that arrogant security guard and make him pay for daring to defy her. Little did Karen know, her actions had set in motion a chain of events that would ultimately spiral beyond her control, testing the very limits of her entitled existence. The battle lines had been drawn, and the fallout would be nothing short of explosive. Karen's mind raced as she stormed away from the club entrance, her designer heels clicking angrily against the pavement. How dare that security guard defy her? Didn't he know who she was? She was a pillar of the community, a respected socialite whose every whim was catered to. This was an outrage, and she would not stand for it. Fumbling in her clutch, Karen quickly dialed the number of the club's owner, her perfectly manicured fingernails tapping impatiently against the phone screen. "This is Karen." She spat as soon as the call connected. "I demand to speak with the owner immediately. That idiot security guard just refused to let me into my own party." There was a brief pause on the other end of the line, followed by a measured response. "I'm afraid I've been made aware of the situation, Karen. The security guard was acting on my orders." Karen's eyes widened in shock. "Your orders? What do you mean?" "After the last incident, where you verbally assaulted one of the bartenders, I've decided that you're no longer welcome at our establishment," the owner explained calmly. "Your behavior has become increasingly disruptive, and we can't risk having you cause further problems at our events." Panic began to set in as Karen realized the gravity of the situation. "You can't do this. This is my party. I'm the one who organized the entire thing. You'll ruin everything if you don't let me in." "I'm sorry, Karen, but my decision is final," the owner replied firmly. "I suggest you find an alternative venue for your event. Good night." The line went dead, leaving Karen staring at her phone in stunned disbelief. This couldn't be happening. How dare they treat her this way? She was the one who had put so much time and effort into planning this party, and now she was being unceremoniously shut out. Rage bubbled up inside her, and Karen knew she had to act fast. There was no way she was going to let these people humiliate her like this. Gripping her phone tightly, she began scrolling through her contacts, determined to find a way to turn the tables and get her revenge. Karen's manicured fingers flew across her phone screen as she scrolled through her contacts, searching for someone, anyone, who could help her salvage the situation. Her mind raced, trying to come up with a plan that would allow her to storm the club and assert her dominance once more. After several frantic calls, Karen finally reached her old friend and occasional confidant, Veronica. "Veronica, thank God you answered," she practically shouted into the phone. "I need your help. That idiot security guard and the club owner have banned me from my own party." Veronica's voice, smooth and measured, responded calmly. "Slow down, Karen. What exactly happened?" Karen quickly recounted the humiliating incident at the club entrance, her voice rising in pitch as she described the guard's audacity in refusing her entry. "Can you believe the nerve of these people?" she fumed. "I'm the one who planned this entire event, and they're just going to shut me out." Veronica was silent for a moment, considering the situation. "That does sound like a rather unfortunate predicament," she said carefully. "But Karen, you have to understand that your behavior at the club has been problematic in the past. Perhaps this is the consequence you've been avoiding for too long." "Consequence?" Karen scoffed. "Veronica, you know I don't accept consequences. I always get what I want, one way or another. Now, are you going to help me or not?" Veronica sighed heavily. "I don't know, Karen. This seems like it could get you into even more trouble. Maybe it's time to just let this one go and move on." Karen's grip tightened on the phone, her knuckles turning white. "Let it go. Veronica, you know I can't do that. This is my party, my event. I'm not going to let some insignificant security guard and a greedy club owner ruin everything I've worked for." "But Karen—" "No buts," Karen interrupted, her voice shrill. "I need you to help me get into that club, Veronica. I don't care what it takes. I'm not leaving until I've shown them who's really in charge here." Veronica hesitated, clearly uncomfortable with the direction the conversation was taking. "I really don't think this is a good idea, Karen. Maybe it's best if you just—" "Are you going to help me or not?" Karen demanded, her patience wearing thin. After a long pause, Veronica's resigned voice came through the line. "All right, fine. I'll see what I can do. But Karen, please be careful. I have a bad feeling about this." "Don't worry, Veronica," Karen replied, a dangerous glint in her eye. "I know exactly what I'm doing." With that, she ended the call, already formulating a plan to storm the club and reclaim her rightful place. Come hell or high water, she would teach that security guard a lesson he'd never forget. As the night wore on, Karen grew increasingly agitated, pacing back and forth outside the club's entrance. She couldn't believe the sheer audacity of the security guard and the club owner. How dare they deny her access to her own event? This was a gross injustice, and she was determined to set things right. Finally, Karen spotted Veronica's sleek sedan pull up to the curb, and her friend emerged, a worried expression on her face. "Okay, Karen, I've pulled some strings," Veronica said hesitantly. "The owner has agreed to let you in, but only if you promise to behave yourself. No more outbursts or causing scenes, understand?" Karen scoffed, tossing her hair over her shoulder. Of course. I'll be on my best behavior. Veronica, you have my word." Veronica eyed her skeptically, but nodded and led the way toward the club's entrance. As they approached, the security guard's gaze hardened, and he stepped forward to block their path. "I thought I made it clear you're not welcome here, ma'am," he said, his voice low and gruff. Karen flashed him a saccharine smile. "Well, that's where you're mistaken, darling. The owner has personally invited me to attend my own party." The guard's eyes narrowed, and he turned to Veronica. "Is this true?" Veronica nodded hesitantly. "Yes, the owner has reconsidered the situation. Karen has promised to behave herself." The guard's lips pressed into a thin line, and he regarded Karen with obvious distrust. "Fine, but the moment she steps out of line, she's out of here. Understand?" "Perfectly," Karen purred, pushing past him and sauntering into the club, a triumphant smirk on her face. Once inside, the party was in full swing, and Karen immediately began making the rounds, greeting her guests with a practiced smile and a string of false platitudes. But beneath the surface, she was seething, her mind consumed by thoughts of revenge against the security guard and the club owner. As the night wore on, Karen's patience began to wear thin, and she found herself growing increasingly agitated by the slightest perceived slight. Drink in hand, she stalked through the crowd, her eyes scanning the room for any sign of the guard or the owner, her fingers itching to tear them down. Little did she know, her thirst for retribution was about to lead her down a path of no return, one that would ultimately unravel the carefully constructed facade of her privileged existence. As the night wore on, Karen's carefully constructed veneer of civility began to crack. The alcohol coursing through her veins only served to heighten her sense of entitlement and her burning desire for revenge against the security guard and the club owner. Clutching her glass tightly, she scanned the crowd. Her eyes narrowed as she searched for her targets. Finally, she spotted the burly guard standing near the entrance, his gaze sweeping the room with a practiced eye. Without a moment's hesitation, Karen strode across the dance floor, her heels clicking against the polished floor. Reaching the guard, she thrust her drink into his chest, causing the liquid to splash across his crisp white shirt. "You think you can just ban me from my own party?" she spat, her voice dripping with venom. "I'll show you who's in charge around here." The guard's eyes widened in surprise, and he instinctively grabbed Karen's wrist, preventing her from launching another assault. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to leave," he said sternly, his grip tightening. Karen let out a shrill laugh, her free hand clawing at the guard's arm. "Ask me. You don't get to ask me anything, you insignificant little pawn. I own this place, and I'll do whatever I want." The commotion had drawn the attention of the other guests, who watched the confrontation with a mixture of horror and fascination. Veronica, who had been mingling nearby, rushed over, her eyes wide with concern. "Karen, what are you doing?" she hissed, placing a hand on her friend's shoulder. "I thought we agreed you'd behave yourself." Karen whirled on Veronica, her eyes wild. "Behave myself? Veronica, this is my party, and I'll do as I please. Now, get this brute off of me before I have him fired." Veronica's expression darkened, and she reluctantly stepped back, shaking her head. "I can't help you this time, Karen. You've gone too far." As the guard's grip tightened, Karen let out a shriek of outrage, struggling against his hold. "You can't do this to me," she screamed. "I'll ruin you. All of you." The commotion had drawn the attention of the club owner, who now strode across the room, his face set in a deep frown. "That's enough, Karen," he said, his voice firm. "You're done here. Security, please escort her out." Karen's eyes widened in horror as the guard began to drag her toward the exit, her manicured nails clawing at his arm. "No, you can't do this," she wailed, her cries echoing through the stunned silence of the club. As the doors swung shut behind her, Karen collapsed onto the pavement, her sobs of rage and humiliation filling the air. She had been humiliated, cast out of her own party, and the realization that she had lost control of the situation only fueled her burning desire for vengeance. Wiping the tears from her eyes, Karen slowly rose to her feet, her jaw set with determination. This wasn't over. She would find a way to make them all pay for this betrayal. Seething with rage, Karen paced back and forth outside the club, her mind racing as she plotted her next move. She couldn't believe the sheer audacity of the security guard and the club owner. How dare they humiliate her in front of her own guests? This was an outrage, and she was determined to make them pay. Pulling out her phone, Karen began frantically scrolling through her contacts, searching for someone, anyone, who could help her exact her revenge. She needed to find a way to strike back, to show these people that she was not to be trifled with. Finally, her eyes settled on a number she hadn't used in years. A contact she had once sworn never to call again. But desperate times called for desperate measures, and Karen knew she had no other choice. Pressing the call button, she held the phone to her ear, her heart pounding with anticipation. After a few rings, a familiar voice answered. "Hello, Karen. It's been a while." "Gus," Karen breathed, a twisted smile spreading across her face. "I need your help." There was a brief pause on the other end of the line, and Karen could practically hear the cogs turning in Gus's mind. "What kind of trouble have you gotten yourself into this time?" Karen quickly recounted the events of the evening, her voice rising in pitch as she described the humiliation she had suffered at the hands of the security guard and the club owner. "I can't let them get away with this, Gus," she hissed. "I need you to help me make them pay." Gus let out a low whistle. "Sounds like you've really stepped in it this time, Karen." "I don't know if I can." "Please, Gus," Karen interrupted, her voice barely above a whisper. "You owe me. After everything I've done for you, you can't just turn your back on me now." There was another long pause, and then Gus sighed heavily. "All right, fine. What do you have in mind?" A triumphant grin spread across Karen's face as she began outlining her plan, her fingers gripping the phone tightly. This was her chance to regain control, to show the world that she was not to be trifled with. And with Gus's help, she was confident that she could pull it off. As the minutes ticked by, Karen's excitement grew, and she could feel the adrenaline coursing through her veins. She was about to unleash a storm of vengeance that would shake the very foundations of the club and everyone in it. This was her moment to shine, and she was determined to seize it with both hands. The night air was thick with tension as Karen's plan began to unfold. Gus, a former associate from her shadier days, had agreed to help her exact her revenge on the security guard and the club owner. Together, they hashed a scheme that would not only humiliate their targets, but also inflict serious damage on the club itself. As the party inside continued, Karen and Gus made their way around the building, meticulously planting small explosive devices in strategic locations. Karen's heart raced with a twisted sense of excitement, her mind consumed by thoughts of the impending chaos. "Are you sure this is going to work?" Gus muttered, his brow furrowed with concern. Karen let out a cold, humorless laugh. "Of course it's going to work. Those idiots will never see it coming." With the final device in place, the pair retreated to a safe distance, Karen's fingers hovering over the detonator on her phone. "Time to give them a taste of their own medicine," she hissed, her thumb pressing down. A series of muffled explosions rocked the club, sending shockwaves through the building and plunging the interior into darkness. Partygoers screamed in terror as they were thrown into disarray, the sound of shattering glass and crumbling concrete adding to the cacophony of chaos. Amidst the pandemonium, the security guard frantically ushered guests toward the exits, his eyes wide with panic. But just as he was about to reach the door, a large piece of the ceiling came crashing down, trapping him beneath the rubble. As the club descended into utter mayhem, Karen and Gus watched from a safe distance, twin expressions of grim satisfaction on their faces. "That'll teach them to mess with me," Karen murmured, her lips curling into a twisted smile. But their triumph was short-lived, as the sound of sirens in the distance quickly shattered their sense of accomplishment. Realizing the authorities were on their way, the pair hastily made their escape, disappearing into the night before anyone could catch them. As the sun began to rise, the once vibrant club lay in ruins, its once proud facade crumbling under the weight of Karen's vindictive actions. The security guard, trapped and injured, was rushed to the hospital, his future now uncertain. And Karen, safe in the knowledge that she had exacted her revenge, couldn't help but feel a twisted sense of satisfaction, a victory that would ultimately prove to be hollow. In the days that followed the disastrous events at the club, the fallout from Karen's actions reverberated through the community. The media was quick to seize on the story, painting a lurid picture of the socialite's descent into madness and the destruction she had wrought. Investigators combed through the wreckage, piecing together the evidence that would ultimately lead them to Karen and her co-conspirator, Gus. The security guard, who had been hospitalized with severe injuries, was interviewed extensively, his harrowing account of the attack fueling the public's outrage. As the noose began to tighten around her, Karen found herself in an unfamiliar position, cornered, and desperate. Her once ironclad reputation lay in tatters, and the realization that she could no longer rely on her wealth and influence to buy her way out of trouble sent shockwaves through her carefully constructed world. Veronica, her closest confidant, had distanced herself, refusing to be drawn into the maelstrom of Karen's self-destruction. "I warned you this would happen," she had said, her voice tinged with disappointment and regret. "Now you have to face the consequences of your actions." Facing the prospect of a lengthy prison sentence, Karen was forced to confront the harsh reality of her choices. The security guard, whose life she had so carelessly endangered, became a constant reminder of the depths to which she had sunk. His recovery, slow and arduous, was a silent rebuke to her entitled and destructive behavior. As the trial dragged on, Karen's carefully crafted facade crumbled, and the true depths of her narcissism and entitlement were laid bare for all to see. She lashed out at the prosecutors, the judge, and even her own lawyers, her desperate attempts to regain control only serving to further condemn her in the eyes of the court. In the end, the verdict was swift and unforgiving. Karen was sentenced to a lengthy prison term, her dreams of maintaining her gilded lifestyle shattered. As she was led away in handcuffs, the once untouchable socialite finally realized the true cost of her actions, the loss of her freedom, her reputation, and the respect of those around her. The chapter on Karen's reign of entitlement had come to a dramatic and inglorious close, a cautionary tale of the dangers of unchecked privilege and the ultimate price of hubris. As the dust settled, the community was left to grapple with the aftermath, forever changed by the tempestuous rise and fall of a woman who had once been the darling of the social elite.